Now Ian Hone narrates our new series, Savage Earth.
We think of our Earth as complete, its creation long settled. But it isn't. 5 billion years since it was formed, it is still changing. Its savage beauty offering hypnotic clues to its power. A power that threatens those who must live on Hell's crust. Volcanoes can change the face of the Earth in moments. Around the world, 500 million people live in their looming shadow. The split-second finality of earthquakes can reduce cities to ruins. In our century alone, they have claimed 1 million lives. But are the Earth's tragedies as random and unpredictable as they sometimes seem? Is there a pattern, if we could only see it, to the violent moods of the planet? Here in the American Northwest are clues to understanding our violent Earth. In Washington state, there is an area of 230 square miles where the land has been stripped bare. It's a wasteland of lifeless mud and steaming rock. But this landscape did not always look this way. Once it was covered in the dense green of ancient cedar forest. This stump of a mountain was once the perfect cone they called the Mount Fuji of America. May the 18th, 1980. Everyone living here knew Mount St. Helens was a volcano, but no one alive had ever seen it erupt. The mountain had been rumbling for 2 months, and the experts had drawn a 5-mile exclusion zone around the peak to protect the public. But those who loved this wilderness still could not believe their mountain was something to be feared. That May morning, Sue Ruff Nelson and her boyfriend were camping with their best friends Terry and Karen 12 miles from the volcano.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was real pristine, gorgeous, huge trees that had moss growing on them. The Green River was beautiful and spring melt-off coming off of it, and just one of those rare spring mornings.
30 miles west of the volcano, another young couple were just waking up.
It's all gone now.
It's beautiful and green. We had just gone down to fish and camp and, enjoy the weather and, the surroundings. Right, and the Forest Service thought that the 5-mile red zone was, plenty of room for the eruption. And we were 25 miles outside of it. And so we thought we were perfectly safe.
That beautiful Sunday morning at 8:32, an earth tremor caused by liquid rock moving a mile below the mountain changed everything. The tremor triggered the biggest landslide ever recorded. 8,000 million tons of rock went crashing down the side of Mount St. Helens. In an instant, the landslide had released the pressure packed inside the mountain, and it blew. Not upwards, like the cartoon volcano people expected, but sideways. An explosion of gas, steam, and rock blasted out at 670 miles per hour and swept down the mountain, hugging the ground. Sue Ruff Nelson and her friends were around the breakfast campfire. They were 12 miles away, but they were not safe.
We all looked up, and it was a small little black cloud, and within a few short seconds it filled the whole entire horizon up. It was like a boiling, moving, solid thing. I remember looking at the fire, and the wind just blew the flames out low along the ground, and watching the handle on my coffee pot just kind of melt in the flames, and then this cloud, and it was like a wall, and it just engulfed us.
The power of that blast cloud uprooted and then boiled the sap in trees that had stood for 600 years. Not a single tree was left standing within 6 miles of the blast.
We realized that there were trees all around us that had fallen down, and we had fallen down into a root ball that had one tree had uprooted one way and the other tree uprooted the other way, and the other trees fell on top of the root ball, and we were enclosed in this little safe little place.
Within minutes, a vast mushroom cloud had risen 12 miles into the sky. Pulverized rock began to fall as fine ash.
And it was so dark and so heavy with ash coming down that I thought we were going to asphyxiate and choke on it. It was just like being inside a blender and not knowing what to do or where to go. And I remember hearing just a shrieking sound and thinking, oh my God, and it was me. I was screaming.
The 600-degree cloud brought other dangers too. It melted the glaciers and created immense fast-moving mud flows. Venus and Ruhr didn't know it yet, but Mount St. Helens was coming to them.
Something was coming through the stand of trees, and we didn't know what it was, but it was snapping trees down right and left.
The mud flows carried thousands of uprooted trees and sawn logs from devastated logging camps.
I landed on a very large log, and my legs went into the mud, and they closed around my legs, and it was crushing one knee, and it was pulling my left leg back, so it was kind of tearing me in half. And the smaller logs were rolling on top of me, knocking me down. And I thought she was dead, and I thought I was going to die. It was hurting so bad that I was just hoping that a bigger log would smash me quick to quit, because I didn't want to be torn in half. It was hurting. It was terrible.
I just held on and kept bobbing up and down, and the logs were closing in on me, all around my head and all around my body. I thought I was going to die at that point.
Her face and hair were just covered. I could see her eyes when she opened her eyes. That was all. She wasn't yelling or anything. And I leaned down and grabbed her hand with one hand and was holding on with another so I wouldn't fall in too. And I pulled, and then you came up. And I held on as tight as I could, but everything was bouncing so bad. I fell down, and she slipped right back in between. And I was really getting upset at this point, because that's 2 times. And you went right under again, and then gone.
The mud flows reached a height of 60 feet and traveled at up to 100 miles per hour. They swept away bridges 40 miles downstream from the volcano. As the rescue operation began, it was clear that had the eruption not happened so early on a Sunday morning, many hundreds of people would have died.
It was just completely destroyed. The whole camp was gone. You couldn't even recognize. And we called for Terry and Karen, and there was no answer. And I think I knew, but I denied that maybe, that they had died in that instant, and that it could happen that fast, and just 1 minute they're there and having fun and having, a wonderful life, and the next they're gone.
Terry and Karen had died instantly, crushed by a falling tree. On his 3rd attempt, Roald managed to pull Venus from the mud flow. Dazed and injured, they were lifted to safety by a helicopter.
I remember that the pilot said, well, do you want to see what almost killed you? Because I still didn't know what was going on. And I went, yeah, what is going on? And he pivoted the helicopter and it came right into view. And there was, the mountains were just spewing smoke just 1,000 miles an hour, as high as you could see, lightning bolts coming out of the clouds, and it was real dramatic. It was like it made us all quiet down. You know, it was like a nightmare. You know, the mountain was gone.
Mount St. Helens had lost 1,300 feet from its summit. 540 million tons of volcanic ash had turned day to night as far as 150 miles away. 2 days later, the ash cloud had reached New York, and within 2 weeks, it had circled the entire globe. 57 people had been killed. All but 3 of them had, like Sue and her friends, been well outside the red zone the experts had considered dangerous. The violent transformation of this landscape, though almost unbelievable to those who witnessed it, was not a surprise. It was not even a major event in Earth's continuing story. For the energy that decapitated Mount St. Helens was but a tiny fraction of the energy that is forever bubbling just below our feet. 95% of the Earth is a white-hot sea of rock and metal, heated to 5,000 degrees centigrade. We are merely passengers, floating above it on a wafer-thin crust of rock that in some places is just 3 miles thick. This is the solid rock we build our lives upon. But the terrifying energy from the Earth's core does not wreak havoc everywhere. The crust is shattered into a dozen large pieces, or plates, and it is where these plates meet that the Earth's savage secrets are revealed. These are Earth's danger lines, where volcanoes are born and where earthquakes fracture. Mount St. Helens sits on one of them that runs up the west coast of America, linking San Francisco's earthquakes with the devastation of May 1980. This is where the plate that carries America joins the plate that carries the entire Pacific Ocean. Another danger line runs along southern Europe. It runs under Italy, through Greece and Armenia, then on through Iran to India and Indonesia, linking different countries and cultures in suffering. This is a hidden line of danger on an invisible map of the world. Down the centuries, the length of these invisible lines, the Earth has twitched and groaned. Nothing can stop it. Along these boundary lines between the plates, earthquakes must happen. For the searing heat below keeps the rigid plates of crust in motion. Every day, the African plate crunches remorselessly against southern Europe, gaining 1/4 of an inch a year, every year. Over hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, the pressure keeps building. On the surface, there's nothing to see. Life goes on as it always has done. But sometime, somewhere along this boundary line, the pressure must be released. On a Sunday night, 6 months after Mount St. Helens blew, deep inside the Earth, something gave. And for these people, the villagers of Leone and Balvano, nothing would ever be quite the same again.
It was like the end of the world, a terrible noise, a rumble, the earth shaking us from one side to another. A movement like this, and then like this, and then like this. At one moment, in the middle of all this chaos, I saw my father. It was very strange. You see, this earthquake turned things upside down. I saw my father in the doorway, with his head down and his feet up.
Io ho visto mio padre sotto l'arco della porta, la testa in giù e i piedi in alto.
It was apocalyptic. We had the impression that nobody was going to escape. There were no lights, and it was dark outside, so we only saw the shadows of the houses still standing.
Along the invisible crack in the crust that runs under Italy, small earthquakes are common. But there is nothing to prepare people for the shock of a major one.
I thought, it will be a terrible death because there's so little air and I won't be able to breathe. Then I felt a wind, a breeze. I thought it was a mouse or the wings of angels coming to take me to heaven. Instead, I looked up, and 3 meters above me there was a hole like this, and I saw the stars and the moon. So, there is air. I will not die.
E io vedevo le stelle, vedevo la luna. Quindi sai, c'è l'aria. Non muoio.
We took all my relatives out of the ruins, and we realized that my sister was dead. We were lucky to live on the top floor. All the other people in the building died.
3,000 people died on that Italian night in these little hilltop towns.
These are feelings you never forget, because they change your life. You have to learn to live with this thing. But this feeling of fear, it never leaves you.
This one crack in the Earth's crust runs for 6,000 miles, from Italy to Turkey and on through India to Indonesia. In this century alone, it has killed more than 400,000 people in earthquakes. At the eastern end of this danger line, in Indonesia, volcanoes as well as frequent earthquakes tell of the turmoil below. Volcanoes transmit the power from the heart of the planet, not in waves through the ground, but thousands of feet up into the air. In 1982, the notorious Indonesian volcano Galunggung erupted, turning the countryside white and sending a plume of ash into the atmosphere, just as Mount St. Helens had done. Oblivious to what was going on below them, the 240 passengers in a jet bound for Australia were just settling down to watch their after-dinner film.
I noticed that the cinema beam, or the beam from the projector, was getting more pronounced. There was a lot of smoke in it.
On the flight deck, the crew were just as baffled. It looked like smoke, but there was no sign of fire anywhere.
The engineer called engine failure number 4 engine. The captain leapt into his seat, and the engineer and I did the fire drill, shut the engine down, and then we sat there because an engine failure is not too much of a problem on a 4-engine aeroplane.
Gradually, the smoke got thicker and thicker until the point where the oxygen mask came down and the lights went out.
The engineer said, number 2 engine's gone. They've all gone. I don't believe it. It was that quick. In 45 seconds to a minute, we'd gone from having all engines working to now having none.
The captain's voice came over and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a small problem. We've lost all 4 engines. We're doing our damnedest to get them going again. We hope you're not in too much distress." Click.
They were 93 miles and 30,000 feet from Galungong, but they had flown right into its expanding ash cloud. Jet engines are not designed to operate in volcanic fallout. The crew struggled in vain to get the engines restarted.
It's an eerie sound, a jet which has lost power. There's no air conditioning hiss, there's no engine noise at all, there's no mechanical noises. All you hear is the creaking of the plastic. And of course this was at night, and we were in the dark, and the exit signs were flashing and there were bells ringing, and it really was quite frightening.
The plane lost 10, 15, 25,000 feet. For 16 helpless minutes it fell. Then, rushing air blew the volcanic ash out of the engines, and the crew were able to get 3 restarted.
We realised we were down and the incident was over. There was an enormous raw cheer on the plane, and the relief, tears streaming down people's faces, and the open relief that we'd survived and we were down.
Like the survivors of Mount St. Helens, they had learnt about Earth's danger lines the hard way. Where the plates of the Earth's crust collide, they unlock a destructive power that can reach even into the sky. Off the south coast of Iceland, one November morning in 1963, a trawler crew thought they saw smoke coming from a fishing boat on fire. But as they got closer, they were witnesses to the most extraordinary sight: the restless Earth in the magnificent act of creation.
It was an enormous icing cake. It was a very funny colors and beautiful. It was a really beautiful sight. It was very exciting, of course. The Surtsey eruption was a tourist eruption.
But the birth of Surtsey was no accident. Like Mount St. Helens, its eruption here was part of Earth's pattern. For below the Atlantic Ocean, there runs another of Earth's danger lines, a splitting seam where 2 of the Earth's plates are tearing apart. Along this splitting seam, new land is constantly being formed. The 16 black rocks called the Westman Islands have all been born from the sea, exactly like Surtsey. Heimaey, the only inhabited Westman Island, emerged from the ocean just 5,000 years ago. Like all Westman Islanders, Hjalmar Gudnason had seen the birth of Surtsey with his own eyes. But he never expected that the Earth had unfinished business on Heimaey too, as he set out for a midnight stroll in January 1973.
I was looking up the hills, and I saw these sparks coming, seemed to come right out of the chimney of a house, but then they started to coming up like a fountain of fire. And then I realized it was something else going on. In a few moments, there was a whole line of fire from up the hill and all the way down to the sea.
Paul Zofinjason, the young town engineer, was also out that night.
It was like the devil himself was tearing up the earth with a welding torch. We saw the fire was coming towards us very fast. The crack was eventually 2 kilometers long.
In the middle of the night, Paul called a meeting, and the decision was made to evacuate Heimaey. By the night's end, fishing boats had carried more than 5,000 islanders to safety. Hjalmar was one of the 200 men who stayed behind to try to protect their island home from the volcano.
There were continuous explosions. and like a 1,000 cannons going on all the time. It could go on like that for days and days, and it was impossible to sleep because of the terrible noise.
To begin with, the curtain of fire burned across open fields. The wind was blowing the ash away from town. But on the third day, Heimai's luck changed.
The wind started to blow from the east, and in just 1 week, 500,000 cubic meters of ash fell on the town.
When I was looking around, the whole island was as if it had been painted completely black. And I think this is probably the worst day that I experienced in a way. I thought this was all over here. Nothing could be done to make this place worth living in anymore.
Now the curtain of fire had become one single volcano, sending streams of lava downhill towards the ash-covered town. The islanders tried everything to stop it reaching their homes.
I thought it was a stupid fight at first. It was very uneven. And I saw the houses being pushed out of the way, everything was pushed out of the way. Then eventually the lava started to crawl onto the town, slowly, and until it came down to where my house was situated. And in the end, it was taken by the lava, burnt down and pushed away. There was nothing left.
But worse was to come. The lava tongue began to creep remorselessly towards the harbor, and without their harbor, there would be no Heimai.
If the lava got the harbor, everyone was sure that then the fight was over, then it was lost altogether. And so the main fight was to fight for the harbor.
The idea came 2 weeks after the eruption started, that it might be possible to stop the lava flowing. We made some experiments with fire engines hosing the lava. We saw that it got cold very fast, and the lava stream looked for another direction to go in.
No one had ever fought a volcano and won. But Paul organized a massive system of pumps that sprayed seawater continuously onto the lava for weeks. No one was really sure why, but at Easter, the lava stream turned. The harbor and the island's fishing industry were saved.
We were so elated. I can't describe it in words. It isn't possible. It was so wonderful.
In the end, there was victory. We could move back, and there was a lot of happiness coming back.
For Hjalmar and the 400 families who lost their homes, returning to the island was a happiness mixed with regret. Today, Fire Mountain casts a shadow over the town that beat the volcano. But it is quiet. Until the next time. Along a 40,000-mile underwater mountain range, volcanoes erupt and grow day by day in the secret depths of the Atlantic Ocean. Only on Iceland do they break the surface. Fire Mountain is the newest peak in the range. Beneath the Atlantic Ocean, the heat below is forcing two of Earth's plates apart. Iceland lies astride this splitting seam. 40 miles north of Iceland's capital, Reykjavik, is a place unique on Earth. The only place above the waves where this splitting seam can be seen. This is the boundary line between the plate that Europeans live on and the plate that carries North America. At this very spot, America is tearing away from Europe at a rate of 1 inch a year, and Iceland is being split apart. Everywhere on the island, there is evidence of the Earth's energy. Less than 1 mile down, the temperature is 200 degrees centigrade. Icelanders perch on one of the most vulnerable fragments of hell's crust. But in their own way, they have learnt to live at peace with its power. Here, the Earth's crust is subjected to enormous pressure. Every 5 years since records began, it has split open. For geologists, each new eruption is an opportunity. For Magnus Tumi Gudmundsson, his favorite volcano, Grimsvötn, presents a special problem. It is hidden half a mile down under Europe's largest glacier.
Eruptions under glaciers has really been my main interest, or even passion. Since I was perhaps 15 or so, I got fascinated with the stories of the Grimsvötn volcano, where you had eruptions under glacier melting ice and causing these enormous water floods. I felt that really fascinating.
Once in a volcanologist's lifetime, there may come a chance when, for a millisecond in geological time, he may get a glimpse of what goes on during an eruption. For Magnus Tumi, that chance came in October 1996. A seismometer on Grimsvötn showed that molten rock was moving under the volcano.
Then I got really excited, my heart took a jump, so I felt I must be up in a plane right away. This is what I'm going to monitor. I'm going to watch this from beginning to end.
Then began for Magnus an extraordinary 6 weeks. Every day, weather permitting, he was up in a reconnaissance plane flying over the glacier.
The weather was absolutely brilliant on this first day of the eruption. So we could see everything very clearly.
The glacier was no longer silky smooth, but pitted and fractured.
You know that there is a powerful eruption taking place, but you don't see any eruption, you just see this collapsing ice.
The volcano was sending out incredible energy. Every second, it was melting 6,000 tons of ice, but still there was nothing to be seen. Then, on the third day,
when we got closer, the pilot said there was something on the radar that he hadn't seen yesterday.
Like a blowtorch, the eruption had blasted its way through 2,500 feet of ice.
We saw for the first time what was happening in the crater. We saw these black ice walls, black covered with ash, and then water with floating ice blocks and ash at the bottom. This was just a very brief glimpse. You really felt you were seeing someone nobody had seen before.
The volcano had melted a canyon in the glacier 6 miles long and 2 miles wide, but there was no sign of the 4 billion tons of meltwater. Suddenly, after 17 days, as if a dam had broken somewhere, the flood came. 30 feet high, traveling at 30 miles an hour, the flow poured out of the glacier at a rate of 55,000 tons per second. It carried icebergs the size of houses that the waves had ripped from the glacier. The torrent destroyed roads and bridges, but flowed harmlessly out to sea, leaving fields of icebergs stranded on the shoreline. Perched perilously on this splitting seam in the Earth's crust, Icelanders watch and wait for the next volcano that will come to redraw the landscape of their island. Hawaii lies far from Earth's danger lines, but it is still the child of Earth's violence.
This entire island is born of fire. People often come here and say, where's the lava? And you're standing on it. So there are different ages of the lava, and you have different volcanoes that have created the different lavas at different times. But here we have the newest land on Earth, and this is Kilauea.
Kilauea is one of the most active volcanoes in the world. And on Kilauea, it is easy to believe that the Earth is alive. For here, the Earth is constantly redesigning itself, constantly creating new land.
Steve?
Yeah?
What are you bringing for film?
I'm going to bring the food.
Intoxicated by the spectacle and the spiritual appeal of volcanoes, Steve and Donna O'Meara were drawn to Hawaii and live in the village of Volcano on the slopes of Kilauea itself.
You ready? We're off on another vacation. Another adventure. Our passion is volcanoes, and we travel all over the world photographing volcanoes and mainly having fantastic adventures. We decided, because we were chasing volcanoes already as single people, we wanted to be married on the volcano.
They flew by helicopter to a lava lake on the side of Kilauea.
We were married on a lava flow that was, what, about 3 hours old?
And then it's covered over now, so
And
no
then
one
it's
will ever
covered over,
step on
so
it
no one
again.
will ever step on that land again.
It's history already.
Make an offering before we go out.
To Steve and Donna, the Earth is a living entity. They share the ancient Hawaiians' reverence for the powerful goddess Pele.
That's for Pele. What we have here is a fissure, a crack in the earth, and rainwater is seeping down into the earth and is coming out as steam. But that's a trivial explanation. Really, the ancient Hawaiians would have seen this as the breath of Pele, the goddess of volcanoes. And to me, this is a very special spot because here the earth is alive. I always like to say the volcano smells like sulfur wrapped in tarnished silver. And the sounds of the volcano are actually what get me the most. But it also talks to you, it chatters. And as it's moving along, it's like crystallizing as it's moving, you see. But to me, it sounds like a lot of different people saying, well, where do we go now? And so the lava's flowing along, and it's tinkling, and it's making all this chattering noises, and then that's opposed to maybe a lava flow, a really strong lava flow, where actually there is no sound. It's just beauty in motion. We're inside a lava tube, which is sort of an underground channel that transports lava, generally to the sea. It looks like it was a final surge of lava flow that came out. It solidified and then probably had a final surge that broke a hole through that whole section of the flow. And you can actually crawl through that hole. It's pretty remarkable. I've actually never seen anything like it. Ultimately, the lava drains out, and you're left with this memory of prehistoric Kilauea. It's pretty bizarre and wonderful at the same time.
500,000 years on, Kilauea is still growing. But it is far from any of Earth's danger lines. The volcano here is fed by a plume of extra hot molten rock. Over millions of years, this hotspot has created every one of the Hawaiian Islands.
I never forget my first eruption. The most amazing aspect of it was when it died. And it went from sounding like a waterfall, but then more gas started coming out than lava. And it was breathing, it was choking, it was inhaling first. The gas would go, and then it would cough. And all this molten phlegm would fly out, spatter all over the ground, and you're in awe, and the sounds echoing off the caldera. All the phlegm would fall back in the throat. The stuff would go flying out, and it would fall back into the throat. Ultimately, the volcano made its last gasp. And that was it. Here, not only do you have one of the world's most active volcanoes right in our backyard, you say, want to see the lava flow? Okay, let's go down the hill. And at the same time, I look up at the sky as the volcano's erupting. Let's say a little piece of lava trickles up into the sky, and there it meets starlight. And it's just this little grand meeting of the universe and Earth.
There's something about volcanoes that fulfill the most incredible artistic creation. I mean, here's
nature,
Mother
painting.
Nature.
Painting before you.
You know,
it's a pastel of lava just covering the sky.
No painting could live up to what nature does in its fiery beauty.
Every island in the Hawaiian chain was born of fire. But with millions of years between each island's formation, it is easy to forget the danger. The savage beauty of the lava streams make their way to the sea, at any cost. In 1983, on the southern side of Kilauea, was the village of Kalapana. With its waving palm trees and its black sand surfing beach, for those who had settled here, it was a little piece of paradise. Today, it is a barren, blackened scar. For Todd and Mary Dressler, Kalapana was their home for more than 10 years.
Got filled up inside the bus.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that great?
Wow.
And there's about, right where that hill is about where Grandma's house was.
Uh-huh.
And just beyond that, maybe 200 feet is about where our house was.
When lava began to fountain from a new split on Kilauea's side, they were taken totally by surprise.
I looked out the window towards the mountain, and there was this huge glow on the mountain. Just like a nuclear glow. And right then I said, oh wow, something serious going on, there's a major eruption. So we drove, all of us got in the car, neighbors, a bunch of us, we drove all the way around to realize that the eruption was happening really close to us, because we couldn't see it any better than right in our own backyard. And it would just come down through the forest and burn lots of forests and maybe catch a few houses. And then it would go away for like a month. And then the mountain would inflate again. And then it would do the same thing again, over and over and over for years. That happened.
For the Dresslers, the nightmare would last 7 years. As the lava crept ever closer, they stayed on, hoping for a miracle.
You look down at the earth and you see like all the ants leaving, all the roaches leaving, all the insects leaving. And one day the birds aren't there. Everything is left because they know it's coming.
it would catch like huge pieces of forest on fire, and to watch that, it was just so powerful and no control. You had absolutely no control of watching this spectacular thing. And of course, the sad thing of this whole thing was as it approached our friends' homes and seeing the sadness of, I mean, we watch people build these homes with blood, sweat, and tears, and to see that just go like just a split second, how devastating that was.
Finally, the lava reached their house. It had traveled 14 miles from the volcano to Kalapana, and its journey was almost over.
Yeah, a lot of memories. Well, Todd called me. He was at the house, and he said, you know, Mary, I want you to come over with me. And at first, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to see something that we created for 10 years. It took us 10 years to build our dream home. So we watched it as he filmed this.
The whole thing's sliding towards the house right now. One way or the other, I loved it, but it's gotta go, it's gotta go.
It was real devastating with each little sparkle and each little crackling, and watching the house getting gutted. It took about 35 minutes to 45 minutes. I felt like I was losing one of my children. It's pretty devastating. We had a lot of memories here.
That was it. It's down.
We built 15 beautiful years here with the girls. It's pretty sad.
You see it right over there? That's Andy's farm over there. When a hurricane comes, you know, the government comes, gives you money to rebuild your house, and you go home. You know, everybody goes home eventually. Well, this is like a nuclear disaster. That's the only way to describe it. There is nothing left. It is absolutely sterile. And no one's going home. Not in our lifetime.
The lava's journey is finished at the sea, where it continues building new land. But off the south coast of Hawaii, the hotspot is building a new island. It is 2,000 feet below the surface and rising, and it even has a name. Loihi should break the surface in 10,000 years' time and will become the newest island in the Hawaiian chain. Mount St. Helens, too, is rebuilding itself. Inside the crater, a new dome is growing. It is already nearly half a mile high. Eventually, it will fill the mountain and erupt again. For geologist Don Swanson, the mountain is a fascinating laboratory, but also a place that reminds him how dangerous it is to underestimate the power of the living Earth.
There's a very mixed sense of feelings when I come in the crater. On the one hand, there's the scientific sense of being very curious about what's happening in the crater. Another very, very strong sense is one of tragedy, because I knew several people who were killed in the eruption, and every time I come in the crater, that at least flashes through my mind. Eruptions are shocking, but they're just an example of how changeable the Earth is. The Earth is constantly changing. Rocks erupted at Mount St. Helens will eventually end up on the seafloor and then enter into the Earth's crust, and they will be melted once more and be re-erupted millions of years down the road in another volcano. Nothing is constant except change on the Earth, and we need to remember that and appreciate that.
I'd always thought that mountains were eternal, and that they were the one thing that would be there no matter what, and that they aren't necessarily true. They change, and sometimes they can change really fast. And I felt just a real great sense of loss with the type of the beauty that was gone. But it was replaced by a really unearthly beauty of its own.
The history of our Earth is one of change and of violence. But this violence is far from random. It is enmeshed in a pattern of danger lines drawn on an invisible map of the world that unite people and places in suffering, though thousands of miles may divide them. It is a pattern etched in the memories and the eerie beauty of Mount St. Helens. Next week on Savage Earth, from California, Mexico, and Japan, the split-second finality of earthquakes. To learn more about our Savage Earth, a booklet is available. Send 2 first-class stamps to Savage Earth, P.O. Box 525, Manchester M60 3JF.